And we recommend that you use vitamin D, especially if you do not get regular adequate sun exposure. We also recommend flavonoid complex and omega-3 salmon oil. Then the next question is actually related to our session of last week. You'll remember that last week, for those of you who joined us, we were talking about type 2 diabetes, which has become a serious epidemic even here on our continent of Africa, where it used to be a very rare thing. We now find that even young children are having health issues that are linked to type 2 diabetes. So the next two questions related to that session. The first question was what to recommend for fatty liver disease. So maybe someone has gone to hospital as a result, or to see a doctor as a result of issues that they're having, and the doctor says they have fatty liver disease. And sometimes some of these illnesses are very new and we don't really understand. So I wanted to mention a few things about fatty liver disease. There are two kinds of fatty liver disease. There's alcoholic fatty liver disease and there's non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So alcoholic fatty liver disease is what used to be common, but it was found only among heavy users, where the alcohol would actually lead to the liver becoming fatty and then becoming scarred because the liver was being overworked detoxifying the alcohol that the person is using. Now, these days, the majority of fatty liver disease is of the non-alcoholic type. That is, it is not found so much amongst alcoholic, but it is found even among young people who use a lot of sugar and refined carbohydrates in their diet. So this is the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It is linked to heavy use of sugar, sugary drinks, and junk food and processed, heavily processed carbohydrates. So it might pique your interest that both alcohol and sugar and sugary things have the same effect on the liver. It causes fat, large amounts of fat to be deposited in the liver, and with time, the liver is going to be seriously damaged and unable to do all its many important functions. Fatty liver simply refers to the condition in which the liver is filled with stored fat, and it occurs as a result. So now the question was not about alcoholic fatty liver disease. Sorry, I didn't mention that. The person who asked the question was actually not a user of alcohol. So it is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So in this case, it is due to a high intake of glucose-rich foods. So this will be foods like sweetened drinks, sugar, high starches, especially refined starches, sweet fruits. You will notice that these days fruits, some of the fruits are very, very sweet because they are hybridized to increase the amount of sugar that they contain. Fruit juices and so on. So this type of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is linked to having a diet that is rich in foods that have got lots of sugar in them. And as we mentioned during the last session, this high amount of sugar and starches is going to cause a high production of the hormone called insulin. And insulin, you'll remember we mentioned, is the storage hormone. It tells the body to store the extra glucose and sugars that are available from the diet. And of course, the problem here is that our normal sugar, like table sugar that we add to our drinks and so on, contains two types of molecules. There's glucose as well as fructose. So fructose, you'll remember, is also found in fruits, the type of sugar that is found in fruits. But the thing with glucose is that it can be used by any cell in the body. Fructose, on the other hand, can only be metabolized by liver cells. So when it comes from the digestive system, it is taken to the liver, and that is the only place where it is used. The liver can convert it either to glycogen, or it can be converted into fat, and the fat is then stored in the liver. So you can see that what will happen here is if we have got a diet that is rich in glucose, fructose, starches, and so on, we are going to have quite a bit of extra energy. If we are maybe manual workers who use a lot of energy, we will be able to use a lot of it. But most of us do not do a lot of manual work, which means that these extras are all going to be converted into fat for storage. And since we eat every day and maybe we eat the same type of food, there is going to be an overload because the liver is going to continue doing this in response to insulin. And the liver is going to store more and more fat. And that is how we end up with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So if we have this situation, we have to first look at our lifestyle and the diet that we eat. The first is to eliminate all carbohydrates, because once we already started having issues like type 2 diabetes, like insulin resistance, like fatty liver disease, our body is telling us that it is not really able to use so much carbohydrate in our diet. So it is going to be important to heavily reduce the amount of carbohydrates in our diet and opt only for small amounts of minimally processed carbohydrates. Why are minimally processed carbohydrates better? Because they contain fiber, and the fiber slows down the rate at which the sugar that comes out of starch digestion enters the blood circulation. And that means that the liver is not going to be overloaded. So if you opt, for example, for maize with a kernel, rather than foods that are made from maize flour, or you opt for something like arrowroots, rather than maybe something made from wheat flour, it means that in the one case, the digestion takes place and the sugar, the products of the carbohydrate digestion enter the blood very quickly, taken to the liver, and immediately the liver starts the work of storing away what is not needed. But if you take something like maize in the vegetables, you find that the fiber in them is going to slow down the rate at which this process takes place, which will give the liver time to deal with it. And of course, there are other measures that we can take. So for that reason, minimally processed carbohydrates, but I mean that maybe it's just a carbohydrate that has been having refined in different ways. The other thing we can do in the lifestyle is to opt for fruit which is not too sweet. So often we don't think about fruits which is not sweet as fruit, but there are plenty of fruits which have not been hybridized to be as sweet as many of the fruits today are. So you can think of things like avocado, which has got very little sugar in it. We think about things like coconut, lime, and lemon. We think about tomatoes, which sometimes we forget is actually a fruit. We think about things like cranberries, cucumbers, other types of berries, and so on. These have got a lot of fiber and very little sugar, and that means that they will not have the problem that you have, for instance, if you opt for something like orange juice, where most of the fiber has been removed, and you simply remain with the water and the fruit sugar that was in the orange. So those are some options on the lifestyle side. And on the on the Neolife side, what we would then recommend is omega-3 salmon oil. We'll also recommend botanical balance. We recommend lipotropic adjunct and also cruciferous plus. So these are going to work hand in hand with our change in our dietary habits. And of course, another thing that will help is increase our level of activity, because the more we are active, the more we use up any of the extra carbohydrates and stored fat that we have. So increasing the level of activity, it may mean different things. You may incorporate walking in your lifestyle. You may incorporate joining a gym if you like. You may incorporate just maybe parking further away than you normally would so that you get an opportunity to walk as you go about your business. But increasing activity in our lifestyle is going to increase the amount of energy that we use, and therefore will not save such a large amount. If we have got a sedentary job, of course, this is even more important. Then the third question was actually another one in the same line, which is someone who has got high blood triglyceride or fatty blood that has got a large amount of fatty acids in it. Again, this comes from habitually eating or drinking foods that are rich in carbohydrates, because remember, carbohydrates, when they are digested, turned into glucose. And in terms of sugar, it turns into glucose and fructose. So as you can see, the question 2 and question 3 are quite linked. The root of the problem is the same, and in fact is quite linked to type 2 diabetes as well. It also increases, it worsens fatty liver, because imagine if there is all this floating about in the blood, it's going to only make things worse for our liver. It also increases inflammation of the pancreas, because the pancreas is another organ that we spoke about last week, which deals with producing the hormones that are in the product of digestion. We are habitually eating food that is rich in carbohydrate. So once again, here, if I can use the analogy of someone who goes and fills the tank of their car with fuel, they come back and they park the car in the garage. Then maybe later on in the day, they go back to the petrol station and they add more fuel, but they did not go. Happen is the tank is going to overflow. So if we keep on filling ourselves with energy-rich foods like carbohydrates, but we do not have a high level of activity, maybe we have got a sedentary job, then we are similarly adding more and more fuel and using very little. Of course, we use quite an amount of energy for our life itself and for the needs of our brain, but the amount of carbohydrates that we need for that is often not nearly the same as the amount that we take in, which means that we have to look in our lifestyle how we can change that situation. This means eliminating refined carbohydrates and opting for those ones that I said, minimally processed ones, increasing the level of physical activity so that we use up more energy, and also reducing meal frequency. So it's like reducing the frequency with which we add fuel to our system. So we can opt, maybe eliminate snacking, and then maybe we eat just once or twice a day, and we make sure that the food is well balanced with plenty of maybe leafy vegetables. We can make sure that we have good quality proteins and so on. So healthy diets. But it is important to reduce meal frequency so that we are able to give our body a chance to use up the extra stored energy that we already have. Neolife products will be helpful in this. So once again, we'll recommend omega-3 salmon oil. We'll recommend garlic allium complex. We'll recommend lipotropic adjunct and vitamin D as well, if we do not have good sun exposure. When I say good sun exposure, I mean that it will depend on your skin complexion. If you're dark-skinned like myself, it means that if you live in a temperate place, I, for example, was born right on the equator. My hometown is smack on the equator, which means that living here in Southern Africa for maybe 4 or 5 months a year, the sun is not strong enough if I don't spend time in the sun, which means I may need to supplement. On the other hand, if I'm at home with, let's say in Kenya, around the equator, and I spend plenty of time outside, then I'll probably be making a fair amount of vitamin D and I may not need to supplement. On the other hand, if I was working in an office or not spending a lot of time outside, I may need to supplement. So with vitamin D, we look at our sun exposure And with that, we can determine whether or not we need to supplement. But suffice to say that we evolved as people who spend a lot of time outside the whole day. We would maybe only come into our dwellings in the evening, which means our sun exposure was a lot. And now that has changed, so we do not get enough sun exposure. And many people tend to be deficient in vitamin D. Hence why Neolife now has got both vitamin D and vitamin A plus D, which assist us. Then another question, so moving away from the questions to do with blood, with fatty liver and fatty blood, we move on to someone wanted to know about what to recommend for amoebiasis. Amoebiasis is a microbial infection. So the first thing I recommend is to get an antimicrobial medicine to kill the microbes. Then on the lifestyle side, the recommendation is to wash hands before eating, avoid contaminated food and drink. And maybe one thing that will support, because the amoebiasis can cause serious diarrhea, to ensure hydration and also to drink bone broth and soup to help to restore the gut health, because the attack from amoebiasis can actually leave one system quite run down. Then Neolife is going to be useful there. We can add garlic allium complex, which helps to kill microbes in our system in order to prevent the amoeba that is the infecting agent here from hiding, let's say, in the liver and so that there is recurrent amoebiasis. So garlic allium complex will be helpful there. We also recommend flavonoid complex and Neolife shake just to help to restore the system and repair it. Then another question was about wound healing, what to recommend for someone who has a wound. And the first recommendation is where serious wounds are concerned, good nursing care is important. And some supplements can also help in the healing of wounds. So we recommend the chelated zinc, we recommend vitamin C as well as vitamin A plus D. Then there are some questions about lupus, so people suffering from lupus. Here, the first lupus is an autoimmune illness that manifests in different ways. Sometimes it affects the skin, sometimes it affects the kidney, and so on. So on the lifestyle side, the first thing we recommend is to try to identify the triggers of the lupus flare-up. It could be things like refined sugar, wheat, and dairy. These tend to be foods to which people with these issues will have an adverse reaction. So identify and avoid any triggers that worsens the condition or causes it to flare up. Then we'll recommend omega-3 salmon oil or ProVitality. So remember, ProVitality also contains omega-3 salmon oil. So if you're going to opt for ProVitality, then it already has omega-3 salmon oil. But if, let's say, for reasons of budget, you are not able to take the entire ProVitality, then at least omega-3 salmon oil will be needed there. And then we recommend vitamin D. This can be a problem is that if the lupus manifests with skin issues, which means that sun exposure might not be recommended. So that means that supplementing for vitamin D will be necessary. Then we also recommend chelated zinc and magnesium for lupus. Then another question was about a condition called polymyositis. On the lifestyle side is to eliminate foods that distress the immune system. The usual culprits, refined sugar, processed and junk food, these ones tend to badly affect our immune system. And if we already have issues of inflammation, the last thing you want to add to an inflamed system is these types of food. So avoid foods that worsen inflammation. As I've said, refined sugars, junk food, and sometimes for some people it's wheat or dairy foods. Then Neolife will give you omega-3 salmon oil, which helps to resolve inflammation. We also will recommend vitamin D and CalMag. The next question was heart problems in pregnancy. So again, heart problems, heart issues here were not specified, but specifically in a pregnant woman. And here, the first recommendation is to see a doctor to identify the root cause. It may have been a pre-existing condition that had not been noticed. Remember that during pregnancy, there is quite a bit of stress put on the heart of the expectant mother, because the volume of blood increases a lot when a woman is expecting, and it means that the heart has to work harder. So if the heart had some issues, then pregnancy could actually bring it to the fore. It could also be a condition that has just developed. Whatever the case may be, our recommendation will be to see a doctor, to be under the care of a doctor, and also to supplement with coenzyme Q10, which helps with heart issues. We also recommend lipotropic adjunct and magnesium complex. Then another question was about erectile dysfunction, also known as ED. Here, there are some lifestyle points that we can recommend. Number one is eliminate all substance abuse. So abuse of alcohol, cannabis, and so on should be eliminated because they contribute to ED. Then the other one is ensure adequate exercise in the lifestyle and also good quality proteins in the diet. Exercise helps also in boosting testosterone in men, which is important for men's reproductive health. Then we also recommend discussing with the doctor if a person is using maybe medication to treat high blood pressure. This can actually, in some cases, bring about erectile dysfunction. So to discuss with the doctor these issues, maybe they may recommend a different drug, or you can also use the supplements and lifestyle measures to normalize your blood pressure. So for ED, the Neolife recommendation will be herbal masculine complex, vitamin B complex, and chelated zinc. Then there were questions about what to recommend to support fertility in a man and a woman. And here we recommend, first of all, to work with a gynecologist or an obstetrician so as to investigate what could be the root cause of reduced fertility. There may be different reasons. And some of them we are able to help with supplementation, others we may not be able to help at all. So it is good to get some background information about this. So of course, in general, the lifestyle, we recommend opting for a healthy lifestyle with good quality proteins, being active and getting good sun exposure, minimizing the load of toxins in the system. So you may eliminate substance abuse, but also the use of plastic to heat food and other types of toxins that may be in our environment. For example, start using home care that is well known to be non-toxic, like our Neolife home care would be a good choice. Maybe you can get Super 10 and LDC and so on. Then the products for men to support fertility will be herbal masculine complex, chelated zinc, and Neolife shake. And if the person spends a lot of time indoors, then of course vitamin D will be added there. For a woman needing products to support fertility, will be herbal feminine complex. We recommend also Provitality, vitamin E, and if it is an older woman, we'll also recommend coenzyme Q10 to help the making of eggs in the woman. Then another question here was a person wanted to know about what to use for rheumatoid arthritis. So remember, we have got two kinds of arthritis. We have got osteoarthritis and we've got rheumatoid arthritis. What the question is about. So rheumatoid arthritis is a joint inflammation that is caused by autoimmunity. So it's an autoimmune illness, and it leads to the swelling of joints and malformation of the fingers and the toes. And and also damage to the cartilage, which means that the joints stop being flexible. So on the lifestyle side, we'll recommend to identify and, if possible, avoid triggers that cause flare-ups, because sometimes the pain and the swelling of the arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, can get worse, and one can try to keep a diary to identify what makes it worse and, where possible, to avoid them. Then on the Neolife side, our recommendation will be Pro-Vitality, or at least omega-3 salmon oil. But here I think Pro-Vitality with the antioxidants and other components of Pro-Vitality is a good choice. We also recommend Full Motion to help with the repairing of cartilage. We recommend CalMag, and also we recommend vitamin D, or good sun exposure is quite helpful for autoimmune conditions, especially sun exposure is good if the sun is not a trigger for flare-up, because certain autoimmune conditions get worse with sun exposure. So if that is the case, if this exposure to the sun is one of the triggers, then I think we would recommend that they supplement with vitamin D, because it is absorption of calcium. So remember, one of the recommendations there is to use CalMag, but vitamin D plays an important role in the absorption of calcium in the diet. And this will means that if you do not get sun exposure, your ability to absorb and lay down calcium in the joints is going to be lessened. So that was my last question for today. I see that the time is almost up, but I want to thank you very much for the time that we have spent together. I hope that you have found the session useful for yourself. If you had maybe a question, or if you did not have a question, I hope that you found the questions that the others asked of use to yourself. So now let me wish you a good evening and also a good month as we move towards the last parts of the month of August. I hope that it has been going well for you. And if not, there is still time in which to turn the tide around and to work towards those goals, because in our Neolife businesses, we start afresh every month, and that means every month is an opportunity to set our goals and to work towards achieving our goals. And you remember that each time we achieve our goals, it means that someone somewhere is either getting empowered in terms of their health, or in terms of the freedom that comes with being self-employed and working towards financial independence. So thank you very much. Let me hand you over to Pascal now.